Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Chris and this is my shop partner Oots, and in this video I'm going to be building a really cool little jewelry box. It has a beautiful live edge river top, has some cool swinging drawers, but best of all, it has a trick drawer on the bottom that's only opened by a secret button. So make sure you stick around to the very end to see how that turned out. So let's get started with the project. With my lumber already thickness, I'm going to start breaking down the piece of quarter sawn white oak that I'm going to use for the case and drawers. This piece of wood has some incredibly beautiful medullary rays, and I want that grain to remain continuous around the sides, to the front, and on all three levels. So I pick out a section of the board that has the most beautiful grain pattern for the front and sides, and then I plane one edge flat and square to ride against my table saw fence, and then I'm going to remove the milling marks from my planer with my number 4 smoothing plane. Now using the Rockler crosscut sled, I square off one end and then start cutting the sections for the sides and the front. Then before I rip the individual pieces, I'm going to label them with some masking tape so that I can keep the grain matched up later on. Next, I'm going to lay out and cut the dovetail joinery for the bottom drawer case and the bottom drawer itself. I'm using hand tools here, but if you're a power tool guy, Rockler sells a really nice dovetail jig that you can use with a router. I'll link that as well as all the other Rockler products and hardware I use on this build down in the description. Go check out their website, they got a lot of really nice stuff. If you're interested in building this project yourself or just want to learn more about the techniques and my process on this, there's going to be plans available on my website, and I had a really nice professionally rendered set of plans created with over 20 pages of detail. Plus I made a detailed multi-part video series where I'll show this build with about 2 hours of step-by-step instruction. I even show some of my problems and mistakes that I make and how to fix them. So a link to the plans is available down in the description, as well as other links to my website where I list all the other tools and products that I use and recommend, so feel free to go and check those out. Next, I'm going to add some drawer dividers using some walnut that'll be mortise and tenon into the sides and back. Now that the drawer is finished, I'm going to start working on the central divider for the middle section, which is one of the coolest parts of this build because it's going to serve as a secret button that actuates the lever at the rear that in turn pushes on the back of the bottom drawer and then opens it. The bottom drawer is going to be recessed 1/8 of an inch back. It's not going to have any drawer pulls on it, and it's going to be held in place with strong rare earth magnets. So the only way to open that bottom drawer without beating on it is to know about this secret button. Here's a little sneak peek, but make sure you stick around to the end because this little secret button turned out super cool in the final piece. Now I'm going to work on the middle swinging drawers, and I'm going to miter those corners. So I set up my table saw and I cut the miters for all those pieces, and then I'm going to use my Rockler router lift that I have installed in my table saw wing to cut the grooves for the bottom to sit in. I have a video on my channel on how I installed this router lift, and I also have a video showing how to cut these grooves by hand. So I'll put links to those down in the description if you want to check that out. Then I'm going to make the rabbets for the drawer bottoms, and I'm going to use my moving philister plane, which is one of my favorite tools, so I break that out any chance I can. But you can use several different methods to cut these, including a router or router lift. In fact, with woodworking, you can accomplish almost any of these tasks multiple different ways, and often with the most simple of tools. So don't get discouraged if you ever see a tool or a technique that you don't know. There's always a different way to do it, and it's about the craftsman's skills and not necessarily about the tools they have. Yes, some tools make things easier and faster, but don't ever get discouraged if you don't have something. There's usually a way to get it done. Now I'm going to drill holes through the top tray, through the middle drawers, and partially into the bottom case for a pin that drawer will pivot on. Then I need to round the back edge of the drawer so that it will clear the back once it's installed. So for this project, Rockler asked if I would make a river top for it and try out a casting resin that they are now carrying, as well as some of their live edge lumber. So first I make a rough form, and using that form as a template, I can create a nice river shape and then cut that out exactly. This is Deep Pour Epoxy by Moss. Now I decided not to color this because I think clear is a little more subtle and classic looking, and it won't take away from the rest of the project. I think a lot of people don't use clear because it's really hard to avoid bubbles in these casting resins, and by coloring the epoxy, you can hide them. This Deep Pour Epoxy from Moss came out extremely clear. It was actually some of the best results I've ever gotten with a casting resin like this, and so I'm pretty impressed. There's a lot of little tips and tricks to get a good epoxy pour, and I go over those in detail in that video series that comes with the plan, so if you're more interested, make sure you check that out. Once the epoxy cures, I plane the top, joint one edge with the hand plane so that I can use my table saw to cut it down to final dimensions, and then I add a nice curved and chamfered edge profile using a hand plane. Then before I add all the hardware and attach the top, I'm going to make a really cool base out of black walnut for the box to sit in. With the box dry assembled, I can use it as a form to glue the base to so that it locks into a really nice tight fit. Then I begin adding the hardware, and I'm going to use some nice little brass pulls for the swinging drawers, some nice brass hinges, a lid stop, and a lid lock that were all from Rockler. They have a really nice selection, so make sure you check all those different options out. I add a couple of these cool ring inserts to one of the swinging drawers, then disassemble everything so that I can do a final glue up. To finish this, I'm using Danish oil, which does a great job of bringing out the beautiful wood grain and character, and I personally like the matte satin finish it leaves. I sanded the top to 320, which gives the clear epoxy a really nice frosted satin look once the finish dries. Well, everyone, thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you haven't already or are new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a bunch.